Alright, I'm a little sick, so sorry about my voice, but why is it that in so many languages the word for coffee is cafe or something along those lines, but in English you go to a cafe to get coffee? What's up with that? Well, despite my illness, I have an answer. The long and short of it is that coffee comes from Dutch, whereas cafe comes from French. But both of those words actually came from the same word in Italian, caffè. And that word meant... Sorry, it's doing a little stretch. So it meant coffee. But in fairness, it also meant cafe. So it was both the drink and the place you go to drink it, which is still the case in Italian and many of those other languages today. So the question then is, where does caffè come from? And this is where things get really cool. If we keep going back, Italian borrowed the word from Ottoman Turkish, which in turn borrowed it from the Arabic word qahwa, meaning coffee as well. But then where did the Arabic word come from? Well, this is where things get a little tricky. Let's see how far we can get. You may already know that coffee is a really big deal in Ethiopia. There's centuries and centuries of history of coffee cultivation there, and a lot of coffee gets produced there to this day. And especially in and around an area that was once known as the Kingdom of Kaffa. Come on. So there was a kingdom called Kaffa that existed for centuries in an area widely known for the cultivation of coffee. Clearly that is where the word coffee comes from. Is what many people assumed. And in fairness, it makes perfect sense, but there's one problem. The word qahwa is explicitly mentioned in an Arabic dictionary that was written 100 years before the Kingdom of Kaffa even existed. And that dictionary derived it from a root corresponding to a rough meaning of satiety, that is to say the opposite of hunger, like fullness. So far so good, sounds like coffee to me, but it didn't mean coffee back then. At the time that this dictionary was written, the word meant wine, like mulled wine. Now here's where it's kind of up in the air. Wine and coffee, you don't want to mix them obviously, but they're not entirely dissimilar, right? They're both plant juice, and it's not completely out of the question that a word for one type of plant juice would eventually come to refer to a different type of plant juice. Now that being said, is it possible that this eventual shift in meaning may have been influenced by the name of the nearby Kingdom of Kaffa? I would say so. At the very least, all of the evidence I've been able to find points to that being a distinct possibility, but I'm not a historical linguist, so I won't give you a definitive answer. That being said, if you know more about this topic, I welcome anything you have to say about it because I'd love to learn more about this history myself. In the meantime, I do think it's quite interesting the idea that the English word for coffee comes from what used to be an Arabic word for wine. And it's also pretty interesting seeing how many online etymology dictionaries have a totally different take on it. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if there's anything else you want me to talk about, and have a wonderful rest of your day.